we should start with doing that. I'll start with you, Dr. Christian Bräuer. Actually, maybe I can even do you almost in alphabetical order. Yes, Dr. Christian Bräuer, President of the CICAE, General Secretary of European Cinemas, Board Member of the FFA, which is the German Film Board, if you're not familiar, CEO of the Yorck Kino Gruppe, and many other things. Welcome, Christian. Where are you joining us from today?
Hi, hello. Nice that you're here. And I'm here at Delphi Lux in Berlin, and we watch here Berlinale, and was awarded in 2019 as Germany's best cinema by our government. So really cinema.
That's excellent. Then we're joined by Niklas Nienaß, a member of the European Parliament, representing Germany and the Green Party, who, among other things, has initiated the Cultural Creators Friendship Group for MEPs standing up for arts and culture. Welcome. Where are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I'm joining you from Rostock, from my hometown at the moment. So not from Brussels, but yeah, again, from Rostock, and very happy to see you all. Very
good. Roberto Olla is the Executive Director of Eurimages, known, of course, mostly as a film fund and an engine of European co-production. But the organization, for instance, also provides exhibition support for Eurimages members states outside the EU, and as a nice detail, also supporting the European Arthouse Cinema Day. Welcome, Roberto. Where are you today?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this group today. I'm in Strasbourg, in France, in my home, because we are, we're teleworking.
That is, alas, the reality for all of us, or for most of us. Mira Staleva is Managing Director of the Sofia International Film Festival and heads, among other things, the festival's co-production market, Sofia Meetings. The organization runs the major Arthouse theater Cinema House, making her an exhibitor. And in addition, she's a producer of international successful Arthouse films. Welcome, Mira.
Hello from Sofia. I'm sitting just 50 meters from a working cinema theater.
That is
cinema
open.
House, which is open. I can see the people getting in from here.
That's
and
wonderful.
I'm in the office because we have the festival opening in 9 days in Sofia meeting. So
excellent. And Harald is head of the media unit at the Education, Audiovisual and Culture Executive Agency, which implements the Creative Europe Media Program. He is seconded from the European Commission, where he previously worked on the AVMS Directive. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome as well. I'm sitting in my living room in the new reality, missing the Berlinale and the live events there.
Yes. And we'll also be joined in a moment by Daniela Elstner. Daniela, oh, here we have you online. Can you?
Yeah, I try. I'm about to reach my home, and I wanted to show you the Arc de Triomphe behind, but I can't. It's too late. So hello, welcome. So I'm almost at home. I have to excuse myself. I'm running there, and I will be there in 2 minutes on my desk.
Very well.
So in Paris.
You are welcome to join us when you can from Paris.
And I'm listening to you.
That's excellent. And Daniela is the Managing Director of Unifrance, which is, of course, the body promoting French film internationally, and also has a background in international sales, most recently as CEO of Doc and Film International, a bit of a legend, I would say, in art house sales, now that she is not on camera and can be embarrassed by my praise. All right, so allow me, before we start, a few moments to set us up. I would say that it's an uncontroversial fact that the realities of exhibition are changing. And we know also that the continuing pandemic is placing enormous pressures on the exhibition sector, from the very largest multinational chains to the smallest volunteer-operated neighborhood film club. Everybody is struggling for slightly different and also many of the same reasons. The release models are changing, as we know, so therefore is funding. And the role of theatrical in relationship to the rights holders, therefore, is also shifting. It was once the main window for earning back your investment. Now or soon it will be one of a few possible paths to market. Now, it's clear that the very traditional kind of what we're most used to, that kind of traditional cinema release, will no longer be available for all titles in the future. It's equally clear that the theatrical releases, at least of the non-traditional kind, but certainly also similar for some titles for the old kind, they will be absolutely essential. Still, these theatrical releases absolutely essential in the new window system, whatever shape that new window system takes. Now, in a moment, a little bit later, we will talk about the path to get to that new landscape, and probably also about the urgent pressures that are caused by the cinema closures themselves. But I would really like for us to start by looking beyond the pandemic. Let's say maybe 5 years ahead. cinemas will be open. I hope the world economy will be recovering. A new landscape has found its form. So I would ask each of you at the beginning to describe your ideal vision for the role of exhibition in the film industry and in film culture. Does anybody know that you want to begin? Christian, you look like you might want to begin. You go.
So then I try to start, and yes, I'm kind of optimistic, and it should be also an optimistic perspective for us. So in my point of view, theatrical exhibition, and especially indie exhibition, will be the most trusted source for audiences in a world of constant content overload. And I guess while streaming platforms are first of all operated around an algorithm, it's on us to be this kind of heart and brain that's the opposite to the algorithm. So that doesn't mean that we don't work digital. No, I guess digital strategy is getting more and more important for the future cinemas in sense of digital customer communication, but also in sense of analysis. But at the end of the day, it's a human power of cinema, submission. And I guess if we look on the next generation, we often talk about cinemas, about the older generation, and it's good that we have, and it's that we have a good health system. So they will come hopefully for decades to cinemas again when pandemic is over. But I guess a future generation is even more critic about what kind of content we have in cinema, in sense of diversity in programming, and not just doing that what algorithm tell us. So I guess to us, the key part of our work in future will be, again, audience development and curation. And yeah, I guess even the collaboration between cinemas and streaming platforms, I guess it's a different kind of work we do. Streaming is first of all at home, but I see also some kind of win-win developments. If, and I guess that's a crucial part, and in 5 years we will have a strong regulation of the internet companies. I guess that's a key for cultural diversity and also for democratic diversities that we need.
Excellent, and very interesting starting points. Let's see, who would like to come in next? Roberto, you go right ahead.
Well, when it comes to ideal vision of the future, I can go easily. It's the reality check that is probably more painful. An ideal vision of the future is a place where there is space for everyone in the industry. The big fish is not eating the small fish. That is my ideal vision of the future. I would like to see the exhibition sector, the cinemas, there to promote quality filmmaking, not necessarily larger audience films, also those ones, of course, but I see them playing a fundamental role in presenting to the audience authors that are maybe also unknown, new talent that people do not necessarily find in a catalog in video on demand platforms. I think curating, just like festivals do, and we have Mira here, she can tell us a lot more about this. I think cinemas, distributors and exhibitors have such an important role to play in introducing new talent, or also not necessarily new, but another way of looking at reality, new voices, important topics that need to be portrayed visually and so on. So my ideal vision of the future is that the different ways of exploiting audiovisual work, film in particular, coexist. And if a regulatory framework, as Christian was saying earlier, is proving necessary, then let's go for it. And that would allow everyone to have to play his or her role in the exploitation of films.
It's interesting also that you're both, I mean, already the two of you are saying that, talking about this idea of the trust in a way that the audience can trust the indie exhibitor to curate a content that they don't already know. That's a very different business proposition. So in some way, the competition from against the sort of blockbuster type cinemas is diverging. Maybe we don't need to worry so much about them anymore, because what we're offering in the art house space is completely different. Niklas, would you like to go next? What is your ideal vision for film's future?
Well, I think that there's two parts to it. One is the cinema as a location also, and you introduced me quite rightly for the CCFG for the culture aspect, but I also do regional policy, and there a special focus on rural areas. And I think that especially in rural areas, the location of a cinema is very important to bring people together, and that's not just true for rural areas, but for cities as well, and especially smaller cinemas function very well to bring people together and then give them new content and stuff to talk about, and maybe even controversial content. And then so I hope that we see way more cinemas as locations and as buildings being popped up or re-established in rural areas, because we want to bring culture not back, but the access to culture back into rural areas and to bring people together. And I think a lot of people also want that after these troubling times. And then on the other hand, concerning culture, as a convinced European, I want to see more European culture. And so therefore I'm very thankful for all the artistic movies and everything that is coming out of Europe, and it's very much on you guys to deliver it to the people and to actually curate it, that people understand and have a discussion about it, and have a little bit more the critical interesting discussion on interesting movies, rather than Michael Bay blowing up stuff again in some blockbuster Hollywood stuff. I think we have enough of that, and we need to see more discussion, ideas, visions to be taught and discussed in movies and cinemas as well.
And that connects, of course, to what you're saying about locations, because especially if these cinemas are bringing in very new ideas in their specific environments, then there needs to be a kind of frame, a social frame in the connection with the exhibition, where again there is that trust, but also the spaces to discuss what you have just experienced. Very interesting. Thank you. Mira, I saw you wanted to come in.
Yes. So ideally, without a reality check, I would love to see people standing in line for the cinema, the way I remember it at the late 70s, 80s. And how we get there with quality films, but how we get to the audience engaged. Education. So I would love really to see cinema in schools, because I don't really get it, how we can teach literature and we don't teach cinema if the last generations are totally audiovisual mode generations. So I think in a way we are behind the time. So I would address all the educational authorities in this respect. And then I would address it as a creativity of distributors, of exhibitors, of festivals, again in direction engagement with the audience, finding new ways to offer these amazing talents that we have, because it's a big queue, let's say. The times we are living in, we are attacked by many stimulus with different entertainment. But I'm totally positive about the cinema and the cinema theaters. I think till the moment we have stories to tell and share, the cinema theaters will be there. So it will just, everything is changing in the moment. The times are quite interesting to observe and to be part of. But without us engaging with the audience, I don't see it quite blossoming. Let's put it like that.
That is correct. And of course, it's very interesting what you're saying about cinema in schools. It's weird. We've been talking about this for long, but it isn't really on the curricula. I don't know, maybe in some European countries, certainly not here in the Nordics, where I spent the most time. It is in theory, but in practice, it rarely happens. And teaching audiovisual reading skills has never been more important.
I think it is about also creativity of the teachers, but they have to be stimulated and encouraged by the people who know cinema, because of course they know pedagogic, but how they can use creatively cinema first in education on the scientific points and human relation points and history, geography, but also in building emotional capacity. Actually, cinema can give so many themes and subjects. It's really, really about creativity and how we use that. And of course, to encourage all these festivals, again, cinema theaters as hubs. For example, Creative Europe had this call last year, 2 years ago, and last year again for cinemas creative hubs. I find it very, very helpful. We really have to focus on developing cinemas as places which are attracting the local communities, so they start recognizing it and know that they're a really important place of their life.
In a way, we can say that if, as we are living in a time of audiovisual media, as we're living in a time of film, then what are the natural places for film culture could be cinemas, even though they aren't necessarily today. Exactly. Harald, you look like you might like to come in.
Indeed. I think what the pandemic taught us is not that just a lot of developments have been accelerated, but it also made clear that something which we did not appreciate as such, indeed is a premium experience. And cinema is a premium experience. And people will want that. They want it now, they want it in the past, and they will want it in the future. So cinemas will come back, but still they have to reinvent themselves. They were doing so before, they will do so in the future. And because we trust in cinemas, we know that cinemas are important. We also give a lot of support to cinemas, to the networks. The Europa Cinema Network has this year an increase which was unprecedented, so from 11 million to 16 million. But 1 million of these 5 additional millions is about innovation and allowing them to come up with new ideas. And this innovation is not just for cinemas, this is all along the value chain. This is also for festivals. Whoever thinks that the world will be the same after as it was before probably is wrong. We, as a public funder, will not see our role in financing air travel. That has an impact everywhere. It has an impact for cinemas, it has an impact for festivals, it has an impact for research projects. So cinemas will be there, they will reinvent themselves, they will be different.
Let me push you a little bit on the specificity for the best possible vision. Can we see that there will be, let's say, many more cinemas in the Europa Cinemas network? Can we see there will be more cinemas overall? Or is that too optimistic? Is that impossibly good for a vision?
No, I would hope for the Europa Cinemas network to grow. But the framework conditions are different. Most likely there will be a consolidation in the market. But the Europa Cinema network will have from our side the resources to grow.
All right. Daniela, am I missing somebody else? No. Daniela, welcome. Thank you for joining us now at your actual desk. So yes, the question is, what is your ideal vision for the role of exhibition in the film industry and in film culture?
Well, I think a lot of things have been said, but I shared, Harald, what you just said about it teached us the whole crisis, or it's teaching us this frustration that got created by not going to theaters, by having these dark places somewhere where we cannot enter anymore. And frustration also creates desire. So for me, it's not only a question of in 5 years, but there's a big meeting point right now when cinemas are going to be reopening that we don't miss. And there, Mira, I agree. I mean, all of you said that basically, that we have to go and see where the younger generation is coming to step in. And I think the good thing is what everyone learned, that it's not so easy actually just sitting at home on this in his own in your own living room and hoping that the film comes to you, because just you open up any of the platforms and you think it's there. You have to reach out for it, to look for it, and suddenly you watch a lot of films that you actually don't want to see, but you just like they bump up and you start. And I think the very important, I mean, you all said it somehow, the curating point of exhibitors is for me really crucial. Well, distributors do curating, and then the exhibitors do it till the end with the audience. And I think this is something where we all have to be very creative together. And us, Unifrance, as a promotion agency, we are really targeting that we can work with the national distributors also to somehow help exhibitors maybe better to, if they have ideas, that they also get the necessary money, because it's always also coming down to basic things. As I think, Christian, you told it, it's a problem also right now to survive with your cash flow. So there's always at the end the money problem. So I think what Creative Europe did is very important, because that's where our audience of tomorrow is going to come back to all these art house cinemas to see this European great diversity of films. And I think the missing that a lot of people actually feel that they miss something right now because they don't go to the cinema where they used to go, because they don't see this film that they usually maybe would not have seen, but suddenly because the critics or the cinema says it's good, come and see it. So I think this is something we really can build something up, but we have to be there at the very precise moment. And I think there will be not 10 moments, there will be 2 or 3 where we have really to reconnect with the public the right way and rush into this missing link maybe. So that's for me a real like a target for Unifrance, but also a challenge, because it's not so easy to define, and each country has its own specificity. So you have
and
to
also we're not going
to
to come out of the pandemic as an on-off switch. It's going to be we open a little,
right.
Then we close again, and
like what happened in Poland, theaters open, everyone is happen, and they have to I think now they're reclosing again. So and this we have to get around that. So there will be a lot of challenges, but within 5 years, if we do it well, I don't know if there have be so many new cinemas, but if the ones that are there are doing very well and people are lining up, as you said, Mira, I think that would be, a greatest success for all of us.
Then I will try to summarize what you have all said. This is very difficult, of course, but let's see. So in our ideal vision of the future, it's maybe 5 years from now, we have at least the same amount of cinemas now as now. We've magically, or we have not through magic, but through good decisions, we have been able to save the ones that are perhaps are going to close. We make sure that infrastructure somehow doesn't disappear. We make sure that there's more cinemas also in rural areas. We protect the cinemas in the small towns. We will work much more proactively with the audience relationship, so that we're able to program meaningful qualitative content to our local specific audiences in a way that gives them joy, but also challenges in interesting ways, right? And I think Daniela said a very interesting word there, which is desire. And I think that's not just the desire to go, of course, and meet, but also the desire for life-changing experiences. And maybe because, in this industry, we're a little bit crisis-oriented, we talked a little about desire in general. In addition, we will have much better film education in schools. We're going to have a much higher relevance, therefore, to younger audiences who are much more invested in film culture and much more fluent in the language of cinema. We will have win-win collaborations with streamers, probably not only, but maybe also the big streamers, but especially I think the smaller streamers in our local markets. And European culture will flourish and travel better. This is a pretty good vision. And it doesn't feel entirely impossible to me, I have to say. It feels actually pretty doable when you put it like this. So my first question is, does anybody need to react to this? Have we missed something important? What's top of mind for you right now? Roberto.
Well, I'll start the polemic.
Of course.
In this ideal world, I think you mentioned it, Johanna, earlier. I think the offer of audiovisual content, of film in particular, should also not forget the younger audience. There is a certain tendency in the production side, in the funding, not in the production, in the funding, I'd say, side, to focus on content that is not necessarily targeted to younger audience, that in turn are looking more and more on TV series. That is perfectly okay, don't get me wrong, there is no judgment of value in that. It's actually wonderful what is happening in the TV series world. But I think a part of that audience that is focusing on TV series on digital platform would be able to go and discover, maybe some of them, the cinema venues with content that is addressed to them. So in an ideal world, if I could add, Johanna, this attention to a younger audience would make the picture even more bright and beautiful.
Well, as you are a funder yourself, so to speak, I have to ask, is this a problem on the funding side, or are you conservative, or is it the projects that are conservative?
Well, it is the egg and the hen circle, vicious circle, because of course producers apply there where they know they will get the funding, and there's a bit of a vicious circle there. I think there is a shared responsibility for looking not only at at the auteur, because that's what quality film is mostly all about. It's giving the chance to auteurs to express themselves, but trying not to forget the link with the audience. I'm not talking about a larger audience necessarily. It can be a niche audience, but if we can reestablish that link also with the younger generation, that would make the whole system more healthy and holistic and work better, in my opinion.
We tend to forget we tend to forget that the previous generations of film revolutionaries who have recreated the art form often were quite young people, actually.
Exactly.
Christian, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I totally agree with Roberto, and it's in my opinion, a crucial point what you said about, because the last decade it was an increase of film production in Europe. At the end we see, and for example cinemas, and if you talk about indie cinemas, rural area cinemas, then we have one screen or 2 or 3 screens. It's usually not that Arthouse theaters, indie theaters have 5, 6, 7 and more screens. So it's about the product if we're talking about curation. And I guess if I look versus innovations, and I see right now innovation, I see in the exhibition sector, and I see in the video on demand sector, and I miss it in the production side. This kind of innovation, and that's, of course, we all know, part of the business model of producers. It's not first of all by really dedicated the product to the audience. I'm pretty sure each producer wants to have a success with his works, but it's not the key focus. And what you said, and it's a question, who give we the floor in future? And I guess to me, one of the crucial points for Europe, we are always talking about cultural diversity, but we still don't have this diversity on screen, not as much as it deserves. And I'm pretty sure a younger generation is expecting it. They are different in all this point of views. And I guess in this field, there's lots to do in sense of innovation also in film production, what we need. And at the end of the day, we often talk about changes in our market. And then often people tell me, yeah, this young generation people expecting that films must be on the same point in theaters and on platform. I don't know, and I don't think so. Why? I watch on Netflix what I get on Netflix. I watch on Amazon Prime what is on Amazon Prime. And I look into the program of my theater, and either I'm interested or not. It's not necessarily that people say, oh, it's in theater, it must be on platforms, because it's not the reality. And why do I have to go to a movie theater? Not for middle of the road movies. I have enough content at home. I can watch series, I can watch films, I can watch lots of shorts on YouTube. People are very creative also in this kind of content creation. But theater, if we have a quite good film, and I just look back 2 years ago, it was a very successful year for Arthouse cinemas. And I talk about 2 phenomena, Parasite and a German movie, System Crasher from Berlinale. And I guess these 2 films wouldn't be possible on a digital world. So there are still movies where filmmakers dedicate their work to the big screen, and there is a need of festivals and in real person film festivals and cinemas. And I guess films like this need every single cinema and every single guest to be and get this phenomenon. And I guess that doesn't mean, of course, there is a need for streaming platforms. We see TV always have been the big business and the bigger part of the business, not cinema. But that's my vision. So even if we talk about the next 5 years.
Yeah, we're going to have to address, I guess, now that we're talking about the fact that the art house audience is aging. And I mean, I'm 42, so I'll be a good customer for my art house cinema for a few decades more. But it's also true that an upmarket offer, a more expensive ticket with perhaps a nicer experience, and perhaps I can buy a cocktail, that has been a very good business model for a lot of exhibitors. And I wonder if there's a risk that our art house exhibition becomes an incredibly bourgeois niche interest, that it's the same kind of people like me who also, you know, have an interest in opera, who also go to art house cinemas. That worries me a little bit. Niklas, would you like to comment on this directly?
Yes, very much. You know, me personally, I am a young person, so I think I hope I can speak a little bit for this generation, and I have to agree a little bit with the direction that you just mentioned, this bourgeois direction that it might take. But I also want to agree just partially with what Christian Bräuer just said, and that is about where do we as a younger generation have the possibility to get the content we want to watch. And of course, there are productions that are made for cinema, for the big screen, for the good audio quality that you have in cinemas. But then on the other hand, you know, I can basically watch every movie I want. And even if they're not on Netflix or not on Amazon, you check out on Movie Pilot where it's streaming or where you can buy it, and then I can buy it for like $2.99 and watch it on YouTube. A lot of movies are there as well, or on any other platform. So whenever I'm not sure if the movie is good or not, I will just pay, you know, $3, watch it at home, and then, okay, it was nice. Only some movies that are really blockbusters that I really want to see on the big screen, maybe with 3D technology or something there, I would go to the cinema. And then there's the other aspect, and that's something that I tried to mention earlier. The moments when I think about cinema, when I remember going to the movie theater, are those moments when there was an event, when there was a reason to go there, when it was a community building exercise, and when it was not about the movie itself so much. Of course, I mean, that's the center of going there, but really the audience was a group watching together, enjoying together, getting disgusted together, throwing popcorn together, or crying together, you know. And if you can build up this community, that is something I think why people want to go to cinema, and that's the reason why young people will also draw to the cinema. One example, one small cinema in my former hometown of Aachen, they had every Wednesday a sneak peek event. And it wasn't about the movies. There were a lot of trash movies going on there. Really not worth the $5 you paid to go in there. But it was a great community. It was always completely full. They had a lottery going on. They gave away posters and etc. And that is stuff, I think, where you can really build a community around, and where it really draws people into it. Because Netflix, you can watch that with a friend or two alone. But the reason to go to cinema is to sit there with 100 people and just enjoy it, to be in a group.
And that's also very smart, because if the movie is good, it will actually get good word of mouth from all of these ambassadors. Daniela, would you like to go next?
Yes, I think what you just said, Niklas, together with what Christian said, actually we want a film, we can watch it. I think that's exactly I think the way we have to change in exhibition, because we will not be able to keep up with these huge marketing machines of the major platforms that target directly young generation, ideally with the ways they do it. So for me, the challenge, and I think that's where we as a promotion agency also were put that a little bit asleep over the last years, because it worked the traditional way. As someone said it this morning, it worked like this before, but we have to wake up now and try to get in a different way. And I think, Christian, with your theaters, you're doing it like through all the social media events, you're like, and tweets and Insta, etc. What you're doing is actually to go back and try to get the younger generation out of their homes for this common experience, as you just said, Niklas. And because once they're out and they share this moment, and maybe they watch a film, as you said, that they don't like particularly, but makes them think of something else, and that's something they would not want by, like, they don't get it by Netflix or Amazon directly because they don't even target them. And I think this is the challenge. How can we go back to that and somehow explain and try to figure out a way? Schools probably, but there are other ways. And I think what you mentioned, Mira, the Creative Europe program about combining theaters, we were thinking about it last year. We didn't have enough time, but I think that's typically things where we have to do cross communication things, where we can get this young generation back, or not even back, like to come to the cinema. And then, of course, we shouldn't forget about the more bourgeois community, because we need them really a lot, especially when I look at the figures of French films all over the world. It's like that. But there's for me really this challenge that we shouldn't, for me, that there is a thing now that everyone wants to do, like that we have to do like the platforms, but we can't anyway. That's impossible. So how can we do differently, but still attract these young people?
It feels like you pointed to two interesting paths there, Daniela, also. So one is about for promotion agencies or other partners to do releases at the same time in many places, maybe also for networks of cinemas to work this way, to get to maximize your reach, so to speak. Harald and then Mira.
Yeah, I'd like to do a little bit of a reality check. And when we talk about cinemas, and when I was saying premium experience, it's also, it has a kind of elitist connotation, surely, huh? Mm. How much time do we spend in watching audiovisual content on average? And then compare it to the average once a year visit of a European to a cinema. So these are completely realities that are falling apart. And no matter how big and important the big screen is, the small screen is relevant and important as well. And Creative Europe is always a kind of in this tension. On the one hand side, industrial policy, and on the other side, maintaining diversity, pluralism, all of that. So, but we can't forget all those people that on 364 days a year don't go to the cinema, but get their content somewhere else.
I agree, although I have to put in a little other number to complement your correct statistics there, which is that, of course, this is an average. So if you live in, for instance, in Sweden, on average once a year, yes. But if you live in a city with many movie theaters, it's 4 times a year. And certain groups, people who are invested in going to the cinemas, maybe 12 times a year. So I think it's different questions.
That's the people that go to the opera 6 times a year.
Yeah, so how do we get people who go 4 times a year to go 5 times a year? How do we get people who go 1 time a year to go 2 times a year? That is 2 very different strategies, probably. Mira, go right ahead.
One tip for that.
Sorry, Niklas. Yeah, or very briefly, Niklas.
Yeah. If you want to get person who never go to the theater to have them go at least once, you need to build a theater in their location so that they're actually able to get there and come back.
Hallelujah! So agreed. Mira, please.
I wanted to comment on Harald. I don't think we have to treat it as a war. I think they're complementary, the small screen and the big screen. Actually, that's my attitude to this. The streamers and the TV can bring a lot because they can make actor stars. And of course, this is the family audience that Roberto was talking about. And we just have to see how, let's say, we can use them to make cinema theater stronger and the cinema exhibition stronger, exactly to use the pluses. But talking about bringing the young people in the cinema, it's a big challenge because basically they've grown up with the archetypes which have been imposed by the strong machine of the Disney. Let's agree that the children film which are all over, these are the Disney. This is our archetype. We already have the children growing up contagious. It's not the right word, of course, I'm joking, but just thinking in this direction, because this is how we perceive stories. And I totally agree that we have to start thinking for funding for younger, for children, and really to encourage this, because it's a type of the story. It's like, imagine it like type of literature. And we have to offer something which develop when they're small, when they're 3, 4, 5, 7 years, they're so open to experiences, to different experiences. But we have to have products. We have to have good films which are kind of different. Again, it's not a war, it's just it's a different scale. But when you have children and you want to kind of be a good teacher to them, you saw the experience, saw the situation. As I said, emotional intelligence, and that's why we want the people in the cinema theaters the experience in the theater is a totally different thing. That's why I don't see it as a war. It's a different thing. At home, you're distracted by everything around, and you're at home. I mean, you're in your lounge outfit, you can snack whatever. It's a totally different attitude. First, the collective experience because of the emotions, which are still kind of with strong animal sensations, like feeling the people next to us, feeling they laughing, feeling them crying, feeling them reacting, however. So this is what the cinema theater is bringing. And that's an emotional intelligence. You learn how to recognize this. So I'm thinking now about the young generations, not for the bourgeois experience. But that's why I consider it so important, and how we can get there is the biggest challenge. I mean, we don't compete with the streamers there already. It's our day, it's nowadays, and we don't have so much money to invest. And the thing is that you don't fight already existing archetype. No point. They're there for good, for whatever they are. They can work for us as cinema exhibitors, let's say, as festivals, and we can work for them. I think it's not by chance that Netflix, as far as I know, they rented the only single screen cinema in New York in 2019 when they were about to close, but they rented it for 10 years because they also need events. Yeah. Because the events will bring their subscribers, kind of, we need each other. So the best thing is to find the right balance, and how we as cinema exhibitors can use the experience of the streamers and curating.
And we know that Netflix titles have done well in those art house cinemas, that in the countries where they have been screened in art houses, they've done well for the art houses, even when they've been on Netflix at the same time. So it's the distinction. I have to say, I agree with you about the young cinemas. Also, we need many more European stories for young people to complement the mainstream content, which is, we have to also be realistic. The mainstream content's quality has also risen a lot in the last 2 decades. So it's also very good. So of course it's more difficult to compete with. So I guess I'm looking at the time, it's galloping away. So my question to you is, what do we need from whom? So I guess one answer, what can we do ourselves within the exhibition sector, and what do we need everybody else to do if we want to move towards these goals? Roberto, you look like you have something on your mind. You go right ahead.
Actually, I don't know if I have something. I was looking at my notes, but well, I'll throw it. I don't know if it works or not, or if I'm answering your question or not. You know, Eurimages, we have done a bit of thinking as usual, and we realized that some of the films that were very innovative, that were trying to break the rules, wouldn't get funded in Eurimages because they wouldn't fit our regulations. And we thought if public funders like us should be helping producers and authors, filmmakers in general, to take risks, we are probably not doing it fully. And another, you know, if you look at the history of cinema, there have been some auteurs that at a certain point have broken completely the rules. Think of neorealism, think of Nouvelle Vague in France, and so on. So how can we help them doing something new and therefore, you know, conquering new audiences? So we have launched a study on non-conventional cinema, whatever that means. Already defined non-conventional cinema, it would be trapping it into a definition. I've read the latest version of the study that is hopefully going to be published soon on our website, if the Board of Management allows us to publish the full version of it. It is extremely interesting because it is trying to make us think outside the box. People working in the cinema industry have acquired such a number of rules over time, and we have like dogmas that we respect religiously, and this study is somehow trying to break those rules. And maybe this is our contribution. I'm not sure, but we're trying to do something new, and this is maybe a new contribution to bringing audiences back to the cinemas for new type of visual aesthetic experience. It's very vague for the time
Finding
being.
where is that innovation, which Christian was asking us before, where is that innovation? It's probably not at the center of what we're doing, because yeah, those titles haven't performed well in cinemas. Yeah. Daniela, you were nodding. Would you like to come in?
No, I just was thinking that each time I'm on a panel with Roberto, I think it's very energetic. Like there's a lot of energy and a lot of good vibes. So thank you, Roberto. But I think what you, this kind of what you just said, that we are too much trapped in our rules, and in our way of that, was I was trying to say earlier. I think we have done it the same way for many years, and it did work, and it was very essential to do it like this. So but the crisis has pushed us somehow through a whole thing that we have to go thinking differently, and we're trying it at Unifrance. We are about to work on a big change for Unifrance, which is too early to announce, but we want to change things, because I think we have to start to think out of the boxes, even on the promotion agencies, etc. But it's very difficult, because I think we are so much used, and not because also it worked like this, that we're also very much afraid of, if we're doing things differently, we will get like a boomerang back and saying that is not going to work, and it's actually counterproductive. So that's why we need to really balance both sides. And well, for the moment, like for us, what we really try to push is what I just said. I try, Unifrance as a promotion agency, we're of course helping. I think it's also a big challenge for artists. Like, how can we, because I think the young generation has to connect to the artists, and we have also to give the possibilities, like on an international scale, to make them more known. I think as Europeans, we all, I mean, you mentioned System Crusher later on. I think it's typically a film. I think you before Berlin, before its career, you wouldn't think of this great huge success that it could have had, by the way, I think everywhere in the world. But of course the crisis made maybe the career a little bit different. But I think this is interesting. So how can we go and try to do things differently? So our side is we go on with distributors, of course, but also with exhibitors. There's really something we started to work in the US with exhibitors directly, not combining distributors and exhibitors to help to see what we can support them a little bit. So this is something we want to work on. But then I think we really have to rethink, and I'm very much interested in the study you just mentioned, because I think this is typically something where is the difference, where can we build up some new things. So
Mira, Staleva.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on Daniela. It's a great idea to work directly with exhibitors, because I even talked several 7-8 years ago with most of the French sales agents. Bulgaria is a small country. It's valid for all the small countries. We don't have a lot of variety, because we have several distributors. We don't have enough cinema theaters. So of course, then you don't have distributors. They're connected. But sometimes the exhibitors would love to screen some films, and this way they develop audience. Yes, of course, they cannot pay big fee for this, but they can do it 50-50. And at the end of the day, they will be the one investing energy in promotion. So if we can kind of tolerate and encourage a scheme like that, which will help the sales agent to give for lower prices old films. I'm not talking about new films which want to have premiere and all this kind of order in the exposure, but for old films, because this is the way we can develop audience, all the different exhibitors, because they might have the passion, the curating ideas, and that would be great. I think there are great films which have never ever landed in Bulgaria, and the asking price, let's say, as a sales, doesn't make sense for me as distributor, because it's too much. I know that I have only one cinema theater that I can show it. The others wouldn't take it. So of course I'm not paying for this. And at the end, this film goes to the pirates. And
it's an interesting fact you're raising, because we know that traditional distribution in small markets, certainly for this kind of art house content, is struggling. It's a lot of very smart people are saying that whole part of the value chain is just disappearing, but we haven't figured out quite how would we want to replace it. How would the rights holders or the promotion agencies or the exhibitors, what kind of structures in an ideal world would we have in between? Maybe we don't have time to solve that problem now, but I think it's interesting to think about it. Christian, would you like to come in on what we need from other stakeholders, or what we need to get better on ourselves?
Sorry. Yes, so quite interesting. So one word to the debate before. So I guess we have to get out the cliches out of our mind. So Hollywood blockbusters are important more for multiplexes, but also sometimes for art house theaters and young versus older generation. So people are today 50 or 60 and they're getting 100. So it's good that we have also films to this generation who love cinemas and know cinemas. But of course, we need to think on the next generation. So I guess we spent, maybe wasted a lot of time in discussions about cinemas versus streaming platforms, and especially cinemas versus a big N. Yes, we know the big N had, they call it a disruptive strategy, but it was destruction, what they wanted to do. It was kind of an aggressive strategy. So we will see if it changed or not. The other streaming platforms are much more open and they know what they have. And if I look on my regular customers, as more they go to theaters, as more streaming subscriptions they have. So maybe it's also good win-win as more people go to cinemas and more they love films. And so offers a different one. So to a streaming platform, it's not important if you watch it once a day or once a week. So you should not stop your subscription. So what do I expect from our industry? And so I guess there is a need for European film and film production, as we don't want to be just dependent on just the big studios and global players. So we need it in an economical way and we need it in a cultural way. So it can be a national blockbuster and it can be an art house title. If we look on the big success in China right now with a Chinese blockbuster, so it's incredible. So we need all kinds of movies, but if we think on our industry and first of all on indie theaters, we need a more holistic approach. I guess the whole industry grew over the last decade. That's quite good. It's today more art house theaters than in an era before digitization. So it's good news. And we have more producers, more distributors. So, but sometimes I have the feeling it's everybody's doing just his job and producers are just thinking about production and we are just getting every day the questions what you do with Netflix. So if I do a big deal and a good deal with Netflix and I will get it, but will be the independent distributors be happy about my decision? If I say, okay, if you accept the Netflix conditions, then you can be part in my cinemas. They would look. So I guess we need a holistic approach, starting from the ideas to the audience. And that means audience development must be the focus of it. And we need an even more holistic approach between Europe, the national film funders and the regional film funders. That's also a problem. I know we see it right now.
Christian,
also
I'm sorry, we're running out of time. I'm going to have to break in here.
I stop it here.
But it's absolutely true. And it's actually at least two different things there. But one really important one that just a while back you were talking about, this idea of film culture, that the people who love film everywhere. And that's probably a really good thing to have in mind. And the other is about this coherence in the landscape, that clearly about all of this, what deal can people, what is fair and what deals can people accept, is going to be also about negotiating in bigger constellations, trying to figure out together in the industry between the stakeholders what kinds of models, because it's not going to be just one, are fair. Incredibly, we're running out of time, so I'm having to gallop to the last question. I have asked if every one of you could possibly share one positive example very quickly of innovation or excellence in Arthouse exhibition that gives you hope already today. Harald, would you like to begin?
I like the flat rate idea of cinema access, cinema subscription in the Netherlands.
Well, that was very briefly indeed. Yes, that's a great model. In some contexts, we should say, not for everybody, but it's fantastic for the people who use it. Niklas, would you like to go next? What is your hope beacon?
My hope beacon is a little bit the fact that in my hometown in Rostock, the Arthouse cinema actually doubled, so now they have 2 rooms. There was obviously before the pandemic, but this shows really that there's an interest for it, and that at least in my generation or in my surroundings, a lot of people really go there because it's a real nice community, it's a nice happening, and it's nice to be there. And also again, we see more and more cinemas also in rural areas. And I think that is really a place where people can come together and have a discussion there and have a nice, place to talk to each other and have something to talk about, which are good movies. And so it's very important for good curation to take out very good movies, maybe controversial, but stuff to talk about.
That's wonderful. Roberto.
Well, actually, as far as I'm concerned, is something that happened to me when I was a student in law school in Italy, and in order to escape the very dry lessons of law, I would go into the Arthouse cinemas of the university, and it was fully funded. It was a real Arthouse cinema. And I think there is such a great connection between cinema and education that we could explore. And if we could contain, I think Mira was saying this earlier, if we could multiply these examples, probably the reason why I'm working in the cinema industry is thanks to that cinema. So let's multiply that example.
Wonderful. Mira.
Roberto, now that you mentioned that, I have to say that when I was a child, kind of 8, 9, 10 years old, back in the socialistic past of Bulgaria, we had cards with 20 or 50 tickets, which every kid was receiving. And I could go with this, you pay a small price, of course, flat rate. And then you can go as a child, but you have all the freedom to choose films, of course, allowed for children. But that was great. This is how I was spending most of my time, basically going to cinema alone when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, but it develops habits. So here I am now working in cinema. But talking about our bigger team, I really think we have to be innovative in the approach, and we should not be afraid to talk with marketeers to be more innovative. You look at all the advertisement for all the other branches, making cars, making yogurt, alcohol, whatever. They're very creative when it comes for advertisement. And the most creative industry of them all, the cinema, is kind of so old-fashioned and traditional in the way we approach audience. So this is something very, very important. I mean, as a think tank, we have to think about that. And of course, I would always encourage meeting with the real creators, with the film directors. That's why the film festivals are so important, but I think it has to become a reality for the cinema theaters also. Bring the creators, bring the film director, they can talk directly to audience. It always makes big difference. As a distributor, as a film festival, I can tell you the big difference in the box office at the end. There are always people in audience when we bring somebody from the crew.
So that one of the hope signs there is that marketing to people is possible. So then we can also do it. Now, Daniela, go right ahead.
2 things. One thing is the subscription, I think, is a good way. I mean, in France, it's in since a long time. And I think this is really one of the things, because people are used to be subscribed somehow in a lot of things, maybe also to theaters. Christian, you might have to say something for that. The other thing is that I really do hope, we all forgot, but last year, before everything locked down, Parasite won mostly all the Oscars, which means a non-English speaking film won all the Oscars. Tomorrow, I will give an award to Céline Sciamma for Portrait of a Lady in Fire for Best French Film, French-speaking film 2020 in admissions worldwide. I think there was a huge, like somehow something happened that had never happened before, and somehow it got stopped. And what I truly hope is that we can reconnect to that, because I think that would make a big change. And that's also where my hope goes in. Like I think we can reconnect to that, and it's actually what happened is amazing, and I hope that somehow stronger, different, in a new way, we can reconnect to that moment.
Parasite and Céline Sciamma for hope. Very, very true. Christian, final hope.
So very short. So one sentence to subscription. We do it since 2009, even before Netflix. And the most new subscribers in the years before pandemic to 18 to 19 have been people under 30 years. So also against the cliches, young people don't go to Arthouse theaters. But just what gives me optimism, it's an analog space of public storytelling. And I guess that's what we need even in a digital time.
Then that's where we're going to end, on the dot, like such pros as we are. Thank you ever so much to all of our panelists. Thank you ever so much to CICAE for putting all of this session together, and to all of you who have been watching, or also with your very interesting comments in the chat. Thank you so much, and I guess that is the end of this panel.
Thank you.